Good morning. We should be hearing shortly about the Russia-Ukraine direct negotiations just beginning today in Istanbul, today being May 15th, and I'm Diane Sare, president of the LaRouche organization. Before I forget, please do submit your questions for Harley Schlanger that you want him to answer in tomorrow's morning update. Now, on the Ukraine-Russia talks, of course, Vladimir Zelensky was making his crazy comments daring Putin to come to Istanbul like some Western movie star. But as the Russians have said, Zelensky is not even the legitimate president. He has overstayed the constitutionally mandated term, which ended in May of 2024. And there has yet to be any indication that Ukraine is actually willing to negotiate an end to the war, since they keep violating all of the ceasefire agreements. Nonetheless, the Russians are sending a delegation, which includes one of the individuals involved in the talks which occurred in 2022, which were then undermined by Boris Johnson and Joe Biden. Ukraine is sending a delegation. And at last report, it sounded like Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff would be arriving on Friday. So hopefully we are beginning to get to the end of that war. I would just like to point out that there is a great difference between Russia's position and that of Ukraine, Ukraine being the proxy nation of the bankrupt British imperial system. On the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Adolf Hitler in Europe, there were 29 heads of state in Moscow. President Putin had meetings with 23 of them, bilateral meetings. This is quite remarkable. He spent 7 hours with President Xi Jinping of China. And it should be remembered that China is the only nation in World War II which lost more people than the Soviet Union losing about 27 million people. 1 in 6 Russians died in that war. In China, it was something, I believe, like 30 million losses. So they certainly know the cost of fighting a fascist terroristic foe. And have a lot of work to do to strengthen the world to resist war and terrorism and to become more peaceful. In Kiev, at the same time, you had the coalition of losers, which was Keir Starmer, British Prime Minister, Macron, Merz from Germany, and Tusk from Poland, and then, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky. And I think that sort of speaks for itself where the world stands at this moment. So Ukraine actually, if they wish to have any land left, have any young men left alive, really would do well to participate in an open fashion in these talks, whether the British, French, CIA, Mossad, and other intelligence agencies running the show will allow them to do that. Or I should say, the intelligence agencies acting on behalf of BlackRock, which apparently now owns about a third of Ukraine, will allow these negotiations to proceed. We shall see. Related to this only because I'm thinking of Josep Borrell, the famous EU commissioner who described the Western European nations as a garden and the rest of the world as a jungle, finally came out forcefully recognizing that there is no way of calling what Israel is doing in Gaza other than genocide. It is not self-defense. They are willfully starving the population to death. And it causes me to ask Mr. Borrell, perhaps you might want to redefine your garden and jungle countries. Perhaps the jungle countries are the ones that are aiding and abetting Bibi Netanyahu in his murderous onslaught. And the garden countries are those nations which have recognize the Palestinian state and are calling for an end to the slaughter. The United States, for its part, seems to be standing in the middle. It is clear that President Trump doesn't like Bibi Netanyahu. The release of Aiden Alexander, the last American hostage, was negotiated without going through Netanyahu, but the plan to deliver aid to Gaza to prevent mass death by starvation is completely insane. It's either going to be a bunch of private BlackRock, Halliburton aid depots and kind of militarized enclosures, or the Israelis will run it, which is absurd because it is Israel which is preventing the delivery. You had UNRWA, the UN Relief Works Agency, which already had 400 operating aid depots, and they have been defunded and largely shut down, which is criminal and absurd. We should use the network that already exists, that knows how to deal with challenges. And there are challenges from Hamas and otherwise, but the main challenge is not Hamas. The main challenge is Israel, which is launching this blockade while bombing and killing hundreds of civilians, even on a daily basis, including many children. And this absolutely has to stop. The other hotspot in the world, courtesy of the British Empire, is India, Pakistan, where India's Prime Minister Modi went to an Air Force base and made a bellicose speech saying that if Pakistan attacks, they will not only attack the terrorists, but the government that is sending them. Pakistan responded rejecting this. So the ceasefire seems to be holding, but it is a bit rough. And again, I would say the sooner that the United States cuts our ties from the legacy of the British imperial system and returns to our American revolutionary identity, which would be absolutely compatible with the process of the BRICS nations and with a robust friendship with China and Russia and the other BRICS nations for trade and other reasons, the sooner that the world will reach a new and serene paradigm. Now, I should just say that aside from the 29 heads of state in Moscow versus the 4 leaders joining Zelensky in Kiev, the other indicator of this shift is the CELAC conference in China. And Xi Jinping had a lengthy dinner with Lula da Silva of Brazil. Lula da Silva had also been in Russia prior to that. It's clear that Brazil is going to be playing a major role in South America going forward, a large nation with a great deal of potential. And I would say the fact that El-Sisi of Egypt went to Moscow for VE Day, Victory Day, which he would not have done before, indicates that he doesn't feel like at the moment the US or Europe has that much to offer, and they can't stop him. The world has very much changed. That is what the United States has to understand. As for President Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia, he did make some important comments denouncing the neocons, denouncing regime change and so-called nation building. But otherwise, the fluff of the speech about all of his brilliant successes, which really aren't true, about the great might of the U.S. military, which could not defeat the Houthi in Yemen, which really probably couldn't win a war unless we used nuclear weapons, in which case everyone would lose. Trump's comments about the great economy, his bragging about the way we're handling the migrant situation, which is really a great deal of cruelty to human beings. I believe we must have controlled borders. I don't think people should be allowed to enter the United States who are not vetted, but running around rounding up people who have been in this country for 15 years, 17 years, acting as law-abiding members of society, We should change our policy. We should make a pathway for them to become tax-paying citizens so they can participate in the functioning of our republic. And I think our republic would only benefit from having more law-abiding, working hard citizens. But instead, we seem to have fallen into this idea of revenge and punishment, which I must say never works. So we are definitely at a crossroads, and the United States is going to be critical. And I do think that on this 250-year anniversary of the founding of our republic, we have an enormous wealth of profound ideas and great leaders like George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, John Quincy Adams, Martin Luther King, Lyndon LaRouche, emphatically, who had perhaps the clearest understanding of the U.S. Constitution and the American Revolution of anybody I ever met. We have an incredible legacy to draw upon to inform how our nation can act in the world today, can play a critical leadership role to promote the freedom of mankind everywhere. And that will not be done through force. It will not be done through war and sanctions. It will be done by a commitment to the good of mankind. So that's it for this morning. Please register for the Schiller Institute Conference on May 24th and 25th in the New York City metropolitan area. The deadline for new registrants is Saturday. If you intend to come in person, obviously you can sign up to watch online up until the moment of the conference. But if you wish to attend in person, registration is closing on Saturday. So please sign up, and hope to see you again soon.